procedurally to ask? What's going to happen is I'm usually if she's done, she'll come back in and then give the first I'll just have you pause and I'll read them out.
Okay, sounds good. So Ken, we don't have someone for No, I don't think so.
Just when we're starting, just when we're starting looking at city, they're going to
You ready? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our meeting of Tuesday, January the 29th, 2019. I'd like to welcome everyone here. I understand we normally start our meetings off with singing O Canada, but we don't have a singer for O Canada, so we are taking volunteers. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to sing O Canada? No? How about council? Okay, okay, Ray Spiteri is going to lead us in O Canada. So Ray, we appreciate that. So seeing that we don't have that, I think that we'll just take a moment of silence.
We do have a recording.
And I'm sorry, Bill, being on his game, has done a recording for us of him singing O Canada this afternoon out front of the City Hall. So we'll draw attention to the monitors, please. Thank you. Yeah, please be seated. Okay, so have all councilors filled out their community appointments for boards and committees? Everybody's handed them in? Okay, so we've got a few more that we need to collect. I know we've got some members in the audience that have got their names on some of the applications. So we're going to pass those over to the clerk's office. They're going to tally the votes, and then we'll announce that a little later tonight.
There's a couple more.
Couple more?
We can collect during the
Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda will be the adoption of the minutes from the January the 15th meeting. Okay, moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Thompson. And just before I call the vote, I'd like to add there were two checks at the last council meeting that I was not present, but that are part of the adoption of the council minutes of the meeting of January 15th. I'd like to declare conflict on Mr. Clerk, check number 422197 and 422866. So if there's no further comments about the minutes, then we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Now we're looking for disclosures of a pecuniary interest for tonight's meeting. Do we have any disclosures? Counselor? No? All right. So now we'll move on to the most exciting part of the meeting, of course, the mayor's reports and announcements. Yeah, they're very brief tonight. Under obituaries, Pauline DeConing, crossing guard. Kenneth Everson, the father of Jason Everson in our Municipal Works Department, and Vince Levine, husband of Eleanor Messner of our Finance Department. These folks have passed away. We offer our condolences to them and to their families. A note of thanks, thank you to staff, the volunteers, regarding the Sports Wall of Fame. The committee did an amazing job for this year, the 30th annual induction ceremony. I'd like to thank Councillor Pietrangelo who had the privilege of swearing in this year's esteemed inductees on behalf of all of us, so thank you, Councillor. And also I know we've got, I think Councillor Strange is on the committee as well. And I'd like to thank you and your committee for all the great work that they did. We'd also like to appreciate the generous sponsors and congratulate the sponsor award recipients and also those sponsors who were recognized for their 30 years of contributions to this event. The next council meeting will be Tuesday, February the 12th. Okay, that is it for the, yes, yes, yeah, I'm all finished, that was quick.
Just, the community lost a great business person and a great community supporter, Mr. Grimmo. Mr. John Grimmo, who was the founder of Niagara Block, one of the first businesses that was on Montrose Road, and built that business with his hands. You know, a tough business, a physical business, but built it from nothing, from making blocks in a little corner of a rented store to building up, which was one of the biggest block supply and sales companies in the area. And Mr. Grimmo passed away.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, motion by Councillor Pietrangelo, seconded by Councillor Carrier that we send a motion of condolence to the Grimmo family on their loss at Niagara Block. All those in favor? Okay, thank you for that. We'll definitely do that. Thank you. Okay, moving on to appointments and presentations. Item 6.1, Women's Place of South Niagara. I understand we've got Amanda Brait here. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good.
Well done.
All right, thank you. Welcome. Amanda's a development director with Women's Place, and she's going to give us an update on the annual book riot and a request from the group.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Good evening, Mayor Diodati and members of council. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you this evening to thank you in person for waiving the fee for the Gale Center for last year's 41st book riot event in support of Women's Place. I'm also here tonight requesting that council consider waiving the fee once again for the 2019 event, which is scheduled for June the 6th to the 10th. I have a slideshow this evening to help celebrate what you helped accomplish and also to demonstrate the many people and moving pieces of this event that make it as successful as it is. I would like to begin by saying that last year's event at the Gale Center was the most successful to date. The event raised a record-breaking amount of $70,000. In a year of transition, we were concerned that we would lose sales which could impact our services. We were pleasantly mistaken. We believe that this can largely be attributed to the facility. To begin with, the staff was truly amazing to work with. The ample space made it comfortable for customers to shop longer. The added traffic from tournaments and the polling station brought in new customers, and the accessibility for parking and also inside the building simply eliminated any barriers. Now let me provide you with some insight of the overall event. Every Tuesday throughout the year, we have a core group of dedicated Beyond Belief volunteers who go to Apple Self-Storage to sort the donations that the generous community members provide. All of the donations are pre-sorted into categories before the sale. Without these invaluable volunteers, this event simply would not be possible. For many years now, we have been fortunate to have the partnership of the Niagara Falls firefighters who donate their time at Apple Self-Storage, loading over 2,000 boxes of books from the 3 storage units that are filled top to bottom, front to back. And they do this with a smile and a great set list of music. Next, we have volunteers who set up the 175 tables, and then 50 plus volunteers are on the receiving end of the books that the firefighters loaded up. They take them off the trucks and then set them on the tables that have the corresponding category, and the books are then unboxed and set out on the tables. This process takes up to 3 days. This is just us ready to welcome community members into the Book Riot sale at the Gale Center. And I also want to note that Councillor Lori Lococo has been an avid volunteer for Women's Place at this event for us for years, and we really appreciate that. So this is a picture of the lineup from the pre-sale event. So the pre-sale event, we do ask for a small donation of $10. to enter, and but besides that, every other sale date and time is free. And it didn't slow them down. This is the lineup for the first day of the sales on the Thursday morning. It's simply incredible, and we're truly appreciative of all the support from the community. This is just an aerial picture so you get an idea of how we filled the space in the arena. And we certainly love the space, but so did the community. I have 3 of many comments that we received on our Facebook page. So the first one is, the book lovers of Niagara thank Women's Place and all of their volunteers for bringing us this event every year. This year was the best I've seen, and I can't wait until next year. The next one is, congratulations, your whole group does a fantastic job. Our community is very fortunate to have such a selfless team of volunteers. Thank you for all your dedication. And then finally, congrats to the team who works tirelessly behind the scenes all year. Glad I could do just a small part by giving a few hours and sharing the post. Move to the Gale Center means continued growth and new goals. See you next year. When City Council waived the fees last year, this allowed Women's Place to invest more money in advertising, and also we could continue to offer items at the sale for a low cost. Most importantly, the services of Women's Place were not impacted by a large rental expense, so thank you. We cannot say enough about how welcoming all the staff were at the Gale Center. They shared in our excitement as the thermometer was filling towards not only reaching but exceeding our goals, and we're eager to help in any way that they can. We worked with Rob McDonald, Manager of Recreation and Customer Service for the City of Niagara Falls, and he provided this statement. The staff at the Gale Center enjoyed hosting the Women's Place Book Riot for the first time in 2018 in our facility. The staff and volunteers that work on this event were great to deal with, very dedicated and appreciative of the space provided. We are very proud that we were able to be a small part of them raising $70,000 towards the programs and services they offer. There's just a few stats from the event. So we had 142 volunteers who combined contributed 1,491 volunteer hours just for this event alone. 2,113 boxes of books were saved from going to the landfill, and over 4,000 people attended the event. This event is much more than a fundraiser for Women's Place. The book ride offers a great deal of value to the community by saving well over 100,000 books from going to the landfill, and offers many volunteer opportunities. It also provides an affordable opportunity for literacy for residents. While hardcover books in retail stores sell for over $30 or more, most books in our sale are only $2.50 each. All these benefits have contributed to our community for over 40 years, and the book ride has become an annual tradition for many. While all of these benefits are great, the book ride started and continues to be an event to raise crucial funds to support Women's Place, who are obviously women and children who are affected by domestic violence and who desperately need help. So our mission is to stop abuse and violence against women and children by providing safety through shelter, counseling, education, advocacy, and community partnerships. Women's Place includes Nova House, 2 shelters, Nova House located in Niagara Falls and Serenity Place in Welland. These shelters provide safe emergency shelters for victims of violence in the south part of Niagara. Last year alone, 310 women and children stayed in Women's Place shelters alone. We received 2,558 crisis calls, or support calls, and which works out to be 7 calls a day. Hundreds more women and children were helped through outreach services such as our Family Court Support Program, Legal Advocacy Program, Counseling for Women and Children, Transitional Housing, and Public Education. Women's Place services are free and confidential, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to anybody who needs them. These services are free whether women and children live in our shelters or not. And just to maintain the services that we currently offer, we need to raise over $550,000 each year. As you can imagine, proceeds from the book ride have a big impact on the overall goal. Any way we can save or eliminate costs will directly benefit the women and children who use our services. Please consider being a part of the success of the 2019 book ride event by once again waiving the fees of the Gale Center. Thank you again for your partnership last year. We hope you will once again waive the rental fees in result, which will help make Niagara Falls a safer and better place to live, work, and play. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Do we
You're
have any
welcome.
questions or comments from councilors? Okay, the motion. Okay, it's a motion by Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Dabrowski, that we waive the fees again for this year. Is there any discussion to the motion?
Is that the motion, or is he moving the motion or the recommendation?
He's making a motion, yeah.
He's making a motion.
Yes.
Okay. It's different than what's in the agenda, that's all.
Well, she's requesting it, and I'm responding.
I understand. That's why I
Yes.
was asking for
How
clarity.
come you're asking questions?
His motion is different than the recommendation that's in the report. Okay, is there any other discussion or questions about the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved.
Thank you
very
so much.
Thank you. So the reason Councilor Pietrangelo pointed that out is because there is going to be a staff report coming later this year regarding fee waiver policies. So that's what was in the report, but council approved it. Next. Okay, now I guess we're not ready.
Number 7, yeah, we can skip number 7.
Okay.
We have to take policy before we go on.
Yes. Okay, number 7, CAO response to questions and comments regarding the NPCA Auditor General's report. Councilor Ioannoni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the report. I appreciate it. There were a couple questions that I had sent in. Well, one important question for me I sent in was, can you tell me who the lawyer was who drafted the MOU or approved the MOU before you went to China?
I don't know if there was, do you remember?
Because I can't imagine that you left and went to China and they sprung an MOU on you that you didn't know. Because there's language in there that when Mrs. Chang was here, I had asked Jane Pepino if she could ask her client why there was certain language in there in regards to immigration. And I was interested in why there's language in there in regards to helping with provincial policy in regards to PSWs. She didn't let Ms. Chang answer that. So I'm kind of curious, that bothered me. So I was kind of curious as to who vetted that before you signed it.
Maybe we can ask our CEO to weigh in?
Well, if I may, through you, Mr. Mayor, the MOU was partly vetted through us, but the MOU did not include language with respect to PSWs. I don't know what you're referring
No,
to.
it does, what it talks about is it's going to look for provincial policy that will be amenable to the application.
And the policy that the document was referring to were policies related to investment opportunities. And it was really, the MOU was not developed or intended to be a document that referred to any specific development application, because at that time, we actually did not have a formal development application in front of us. The application, or I'm sorry, the MOU, if you recall, at that time, the Premier and provincial representatives, and at that time, we were encouraged by the then Minister of Tourism, Minister Chan, to attend on that provincial trip to look at investment opportunities for Ontario. So the MOU was geared around things like, you talked about immigration, being business friendly, looking at provincial policies that would encourage investment. So none of that document was ever intended to have any meaning towards a development application or a PSW application. It did talk about us working with investors to streamline and get things in front of council and expedite things, but it never talked about a specific development application. It was really geared, Mr. Mayor, around more economic development. I know Mr. Felicetti had some input into the language. Him and I had reviewed some of it. I don't recall it being vetted through any lawyer. There's language in there that basically says it's not legally binding, that anything would have to be approved by this council regardless. So we made sure we had language in there that would protect this council, because basically the mayor or any individual person can't bind council, and that document was not intended to bind council. It was just a memorandum of understanding of principles relating to investment.
Can you tell me where it says it has to come back to council to be approved? Because I don't find it, and it's sitting in.
I think if you look near the end of the document, I don't have it in front of me, but it talks about not being legally bound and.
But there's nothing that says it's coming back to Niagara Falls City Council.
No, but I think it says in there something about council, it's
Nope.
subject to council approvals.
Nope.
There's some language. Again, I don't have it in front of me, so.
This MOU does not impose any legally binding obligations on the parties, in witness whereof the undersigned being duly authorized by both parties, meaning you are authorized by the city to sign this document. And I guess I've been asked the question, when it's very hard to get answers from the NPCA, and it took a lawsuit that the NPCA lost, I'm not going to debate that, the lawsuit that the NPCA lost, and then 2 rulings in a court to get information in regards to the board structure of the NPCA. And while we are not the NPCA, it is totally circular. We've again been, Thundering Waters was again the news story of the year, 2nd year running, based on everything from what's going on at the region to what's going on at the NPCA to what was going on in this council chamber. So when I'm asked, who authorized this? The city, we gave you permission to, not permission, that sounds wrong. We made a motion to allow the developer to pay for your way to China. China was paying your way for the trip. How long before you went to the trip did you know that this MOU was going to be something you engaged in? And I can't understand why you would go there and have language in a document like this that would not have been vetted by one of your lawyers. And I say this because I sat at the region before Mr. D'Angelo went off on sick leave, when they made the vote to send him to China. They weren't going to send him, they were going to send him. And he made this speech to the chamber that said how important it was to have the head of an organization attend firsthand to the Chinese people, because that held so much weight. And as CAO of the region, it was understood that he should be the one to attend, because it held a different connotation there than it did here. So did they think it was a different connotation than ours? When you read her letters to us, I get that impression. So this was November 2015. So I'm just wondering, how far ahead did you have this? Did Mr. Beeman see it? Did any lawyer see it?
Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the part of the comment, Councillor, that in the Chinese culture, it's important to have your top officials there, is something that we definitely have experienced. With respect to that document was quite literally crafted while we were in China. That document was put together through a series of meetings that we had with provincial individuals that were in attendance, along with us in our delegation. We didn't review it with legal simply because, as we made sure was in the document, is that it's not a legally binding document. And that was quite clear to all the parties. It was there as a show of our interest in attracting foreign investment. I can't put this in perspective enough. This was a foreign investment document, not a document that was talking about any specific development or application proposal, and not specifically talking about PSW. So quite frankly, the document, I can tell you, we didn't engage in any discussions about PSWs as part of this. We did meet with several Chinese companies while we were in China that were interested in perhaps investing not only in Ontario but in this development. We're looking at perhaps relocating or expanding into the Niagara Falls market. And those were the kind of discussions that we had throughout that trip. So again, this was a economic development MOU that was looked at as encouraging investment into our community.
So the Auditor General's report says differently. The Auditor General's report highlights that the MPCA was focused on Thundering Waters and Paradise. Like, I've read it. I'm paying attention to everything that's going on. So you were there in November 2015. In the email that I sent you with the references and the questions, I sent you the reference from the Auditor General's report, then my questions. So in your memorandum of understanding, it says, appointing and giving power to Party A to be in charge of the business matching events, we're Party A, attracting investment and brand management of Paradise project in Niagara Falls. Well, you knew by November 2015 that Paradise was going on Thundering Waters because that's in the Auditor General's report, in the timeline.
So, Counselor, that's referring to economic development opportunities. That's talking about investment opportunities. That's what that is. They were asking for our assistance in matching up companies, for them to do marketing, to attract investment, and we did. We met with several companies while we were in China. That's what that is intended to mean. It's not directed at the development application or PSWs. Quite frankly, if you look at the timeline, we were in China in November. PSWs weren't even discussed around this table until sometime in the first quarter of 2016 of the next year. In fact, the CAO of the Conservation Authority, they came here in, I think, April of 16 to ask this council if it wanted to participate in a pilot project on biodiversity offsetting. This council said no. So when we were in China, those PSW and biodiversity offsetting projects were not even on the radar, and that's what the timeline shows.
So until April, it wasn't on the radar?
No, they came here in April to ask us to participate.
Okay. So here is a letter, February 11th, 2016, from our staff to the developer's agent that says, there's an intro, but that says, based on your desire for a June 2016 adoption of the secondary plan and the uncertainties associated with the province's timeline of the wetland discussion papers and its outcome, the NPCA, this is 2 months before they came to us, Mr. Todd, the NPCA is unable to support the offsetting of provincially significant wetlands and any proposal of such within the secondary plan. Should the provincial framework change to support offsetting of PSWs prior to the adoption, then the NPCA may be in the position to consider biodiversity offsetting. Should your client wish to seek provincial permission to undertake biodiversity offsetting as a pilot project, she may wish to avail herself of her political contacts, including those here at the council in the city of Niagara Falls. That is from our staff, you're copied, and that is February 2011. So this is, may I finish?
Yeah, sure.
I thought I had the floor. So 2 months before Mr. D'Angelo and Mr. Timms came here, it was already off the table at the NPCA. They knew it wasn't going to work. In the letter from our staff to her developer, it tells them 2 months before that dog and pony show here that they knew it wasn't going to work. I've watched that. A Better Niagara taped it. It's fascinating to watch when you read the Auditor General's report and the information that I have in my hands, because it's totally contrary to everything we were told in this council chamber. So I don't want to be argumentative. I want to say, as a councillor, we deserve to be told the truth at this council table. End of story. If we ask a question, it shouldn't be through FOI. We shouldn't have to ring it out. It shouldn't be through a court proceeding. It's simple questions. I questioned the validity of the information we were given the night council passed that application. But staff knew before Mr. D'Angelo stood there and did his dog and pony show that what he was telling us was not true. I'm not done. I still have the floor. January 9th.
We're going to respond to that first,
Well,
Councilor. before you-
this is hat in hand with that, if you don't mind, so I'll finish it. Then January 19th, a letter was sent to the same agent that says, as you are aware, staff members of the city, region, and Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority met Wednesday, June 13th to discuss several important and related issues that are affecting the Thundering Waters secondary plan area. So you're telling us you didn't know till April, and I specifically said to you, so you didn't know till April, and you said no, they came here, but our staff and you sit on it. It's copied to the technical committee, Sir Ken Todge, Sir Felicetti, and the rest of them who are all consultants, and I'm not sure if they're consultants for Ms. Chang or whether we paid them, but I have a problem with that April meeting. And they came here and they lied through their teeth based on the Auditor General's report, knowing that biodiversity was not going to work. That's not your fault that they stood there and told us NPCA approved it, because we know now through the timeline that they didn't. What bothers me is You knew through the timeline that they didn't, based on these 2 letters to Ms. Chang's agent signed by our staff. So I'm just curious how that happens.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, as applications come in, and I think we've answered that in one of the questions in the report.
No, you didn't.
I believe we did. That there are many development applications that come into our staff. And at the staff level, and I'm talking at the technical level, whether it's planning staff at the region, planning staff at the MPCA, planning staff at the city, depending on what the application, if there's other experts that come into that room, as soon as that development application comes in, they're meeting. And in this case, those discussions were happening at the staff level, and those are the letters you're referring to. Those are development, Alex, we call it development committee review, that the staffs are sorting out the policy language based on the proposals that have been submitted. That goes on all the time.
Okay.
All the time.
You're not
Well,
answering my
I have
question,
the
Mr.
floor, and I
Todd.
am gonna answer
You
your
do,
question.
and I respect that, but you
So-
haven't answered my question.
So, well, I'm not finished yet. So that happens all the time. What ends up happening then is that the MPCA staff are saying biodiversity offsetting is off the table. However, what I'm saying is that in April, their CAO and their board chair at the board level now, because it's just like this council, staff around here doesn't get the final say, this council gets the final say. So in April, their CAO and chairman show up at this council, regardless of what their staff might have said in a letter to our staff back in February, that they wanted us to participate in a biodiversity offsetting situation. This council said no. We then wrote back to them as a result of this council decision. Mr. Hurlovich, in his report, if you see in the chronology, in April, we took a formal position that biodiversity offsetting on the Paradise development was not going to happen. What you're referring to that happened prior to April were staff discussions at the technical level. Those happen every day of the week. So it wasn't we were misforming anybody or misleading anybody, that until those things get presented to this council, they're meaningless. They have no approval.
Okay. So when they stood there and did their biodiversity works, it's been proven here, it's been proven there, you have to watch it again. And I probably should have sent everybody a link, but none of what they said was true. According to this letter from our staff, you knew what he's saying is not true. Because we had, in your letter from our staff 2 months before, it's already stated, biodiversity is not going to work. We are not interested in it. I'm sorry, and I should phrase it exactly. May I finish, please? The NPCA is unable to support the offsetting of provincially significant wetlands. That's not what Mr. Timms or Mr. D'Angelo said there. And I asked them very specific questions. And their answers were totally contrary to the letter from our staff copied to you. And my point on this is, if you know they're not telling the truth, you should stand up and say, hey, you know, just so that council knows, staff sent a letter to their agent, letting them know that the NPCA is unable to support the biodiversity offsetting, rather than listening to them tell us that they do support it, and they're asking us to support something that they have already decided they're not supporting. This follows the same timeline in the Auditor General's report. Now, I'm not the only person to question this. Today, the investigation into Mr. D'Angelo's hiring by the Ombudsman has now moved into the NPCA also. At the end, it's coming back here. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. I'm showing you the timeline of communication from our staff. And through that, in subsequent newspaper articles, you're quoted, the mayor is quoted as saying, the city is not pushing biodiversity. The NPCA was pushing the biodiversity. Helen Chang was pushing the biodiversity. This letter from our staff says, As you know, we are attempting to obtain provincial approval for the utilization of biodiversity offsetting with respect to the provincially significant wetlands in the plan area, Thundering Waters. So to say that you didn't know before April is wrong.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, so if you look at the chronology and follow it all the way through, Councillor, because it was the province, through a white paper that they had presented sometime in 2015, that the MPCA, not the city, was actively involved with, that was setting the tone for biodiversity offsetting across the province. That's how this got started. It started at the provincial level. And when this came to our staff level as a concept, the province was still in the throes of investigating whether biodiversity offsetting was going to be something of a policy. We found through that process up until April, and even at that time, we had a motion here of the Regional Planning Committee, as the chronology indicates, that the Region Planning Department in May of 16, which was just prior to the CAO and the chair from the MPCA standing at our podium, the Regional Planning Committee had passed a recommendation to ask the province to look at biodiversity offsetting pilot projects in the region.
Oh, I agree. I
So-
believe the region was misled too. I don't believe any councillor in the region was told absolutely how things were going, because they did the same dog and pony presentation the week before that at the regional council,
So in
and
term-
said the same things that are contrary to your letters here and the Auditor General's report.
So in terms of our council, we reported to you in April. So whatever happened at a staff level before that has no bearing on what this council dealt with. By the time Mr. Hurlovich reported here in April, we had recommendations that said that biodiversity offsetting was not going to be part of this development. That was in the staff report.
Did you contradict Mr. D'Angelo or Mr. Timms when they said the NPCA was supporting biodiversity, when in your letters, did you stand up and clear that up with council?
Councillor, you have the CAO and the chair of the MPCA standing in front of this council saying that they as a board are looking for partners to participate in a pilot. Why am I going to contradict that? That's a board direction that they're bringing to us.
But it's not your board.
It's
You
not
were-
my point to contradict their board position.
It is your job as CAO to tell this council whether what they're saying is true or not.
How do I know that that's true? I don't know what their board activities are, council. That's not my job.
Mr. Todd, that is a bad answer. That.
Counselor, where are we going with this? Because we're not on trial here.
No,
Where are we
you
going
aren't, no,
with
you
this?
aren't on trial, Mr. Mayor. I was looking for information. I got the condensed, we don't want to make waves, we're not going to be specific, we're not following a timeline kind of information. I just wanted to know if you'd stand here and tell us exactly what happened. And we still don't have the answers, but I'm not going to argue that. I'm assuming that's going to come out in an investigation anyway, so thank you.
Thank you. Motion to receive and file?
Receive and
Moved
file.
by Counselor Kerrio, seconded by Counselor Strange. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to planning matters, 8.1. Oh, do we have to, well,
New business?
yeah, well, okay, you know what we're going to do? Yeah, we can go to reports. Okay, 9.1 additional reports, Glen Gate Park report. We got a motion by Counselor Pietrangelo, second by Counselor Campbell. There's no discussions around that. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. 9.2 is the Weeping Tile, the RAP program. Moved by Counselor Pietrangelo, second by Counselor Thompson for approval of the program and updated financials. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you. Item 9.3, PBD 2019-04, the sale and transfer of property known as 6880 Stanley Avenue. Do we have a motion by Counselor Thompson, seconded by Counselor Strange, that we move forward on the recommendation and consent to the transfer of the titles of the properties? All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Item 9.4, TS 2019-01, the school crossing guard hourly wage adjustment and staffing level report.
Recommendation, Rich.
Moved by Counselor Kerrio, Yes, Councillor
Speak to
Campbell?
the motion?
Yes?
Your worship, I support the increased hourly wage rate, but the living wage in Niagara Falls is publicly stated as $17.99. If we're gonna be hiring these people on an hourly basis, the least we could do is provide them with a living wage. The difference between the 17.34, what is it, 55, 56, 57 cents?
Yeah, 66 cents.
I would support the motion, but I would like that they be paid the living wage in our community.
Okay, okay. So,
That would be my motion.
who made the motion, the original motion? I'm sorry, was Councillor Carroll? Are you agreeable to?
Well, I'd like to ask a question first on how we arrived at 1734 before everybody gets up and becomes an expert
Can't
on
we
wages.
answer that? Do we, Matt, are you, okay, yeah, sure, if you could help us out with that number?
Yeah, so the difference between the wages reflected of what the difference was before, when the minimum wage was $11.60. So it's just the same increment increase as in 2013, I believe.
That's what you picked.
Yes.
So they went up the same number that minimum wage went up, right? Yes, Councillor Pietrangelo?
Yeah, Your Worship, just a question. I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed, but is this something that maybe we want to pass back to staff? I mean, I don't really know that council should be, I guess, changing wages in reports that come forward to us. Maybe we should have some rationale from staff as to whether or not we should be doing something like this. I don't ever remember doing this in the past where we've set a salary level. So, again, it's not
Yep.
something I'm opposed to, but maybe it's something that we should ask staff for their advice or even to come back with.
Yeah, fair comment, CEO's gonna.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. We really do need to get on with this because we need to get out with recruitment. We're having difficulties right now. So, but as was indicated, we had a historical differential with minimum wage up to what we were paying, and what we did is we've indicated. Mr. Bilodeau's just indicated we just maintain that same differential. So we're quite happy with that. We believe that's what the wage should be. However, if council wants to look at what that minimum living wage in the community is, then that's council's discretion. But that's how that wage was determined, to maintain that differential as we move through.
Councillor Lococo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been speaking with the staff regarding a living wage. For municipalities, it's a 3-step program, and in order to do that, you have to complete all 3 steps. So I am investigating it and talking with Trent to see where we can go, and eventually there will be a request for staff to come back with that.
Okay, okay, fair enough.
Do we have an accurate calculation of what the living wage is?
I'm not sure where we come up with that number. Yep, Councillor Lococo.
There's Niagara Poverty Network. They come up with a calculation per city. They look at the rent rates, hydro, gas, transportation, and they come up with it based on that community, and ours is $17.99. But a municipality is different than a living wage employer. In the last couple of months, we've had a lot of living wage employers, but a municipality is different, so we have to look at it a little bit differently. We are in the process of looking at it, though.
Councillor Carrier.
Well, the only issue I have with your worship is that council on the fly changing this report and us not doing enough investigation. So does this trigger any other problems, any other wages? Someone comes back and says, well, you decided that now you're gonna make this a living wage. What about this? What about this job? What about that job? I don't know if I wanna open that can of worms without having an investigation on it. If that's what our plan's gonna be, that we're gonna work toward that on all jobs or whatever, okay. But just to pick this one out of a hat, at a whim, and decide we're gonna pick this one and decide to do it, I don't think I'd support it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, just in response to Mr. Todd saying that we do have to get on with it, perhaps we can pass the recommendation and just say that it's subject to a salary pending review. And that review can come back to
When we see
council.
the rest of the reports, we could review it.
Okay, Councillor Inoue.
And maybe it tells us what the increase is gonna be here, maybe it could tell us what the increase would be to if it's a living wage, what the difference would be to what we're approving tonight to what it would be if we actually raised it.
Okay, so if we go back to the original motion by Councillor Carrier, remove the recommendation
Absolutely.
as it is, and then we can have staff come back and give us an update on the impact of a living wage if we were to do that in the city. Yep, Mr. CAO?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a suggestion, perhaps what we could do if council approved this report tonight, we could go now and do further recruitment based on the dollar amount here. we could come back with a report. That way we'd be able to include those additional dollars in the budget, but we could make that new living wage number effective for September, because that's when the new school year will start. So that might be a good compromise even for our staff to be able to get out and advertise at this number and then make the change as we get into that new season in September.
Councillor Ioannoni and then Peter Angelo.
Do we have, I know it's hard, it's a unforgiving, freezing cold, very hot at times job. And they become like family to the kids who they're crossing. They cross the same kids every day, you know. Do we have every position filled? Like when it says it's hard to recruit, do we have spots that don't have a crossing guard because we can't attract anybody right now?
Mr. Bilodeau?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this point in time, we're 9 positions short. We currently have 6 roving positions. All those rovers are currently occupied, filling the proper locations at filling the vacancies. We are resulting in closing. We have 1 crossing that's currently closed, and we also are splitting locations that should have 2 guards. Some of them have 1 currently.
Okay. Councillor Peter Angelo? You're good? So we have a motion by Councillor Peter Angelo. Do I have a seconder?
It's me, just a
What did, I'm sorry, Councillor Carrio. And I need a seconder. Did I see a Councillor Lococo? Okay, if there's no further discussion.
What was the rest of that motion? I thought there was an addendum.
There's 2 parts here. Where the first part is the hourly wage goes up to $17.34, and the second, that staff conduct a review of all locations, come back to council, and then the last part is staff is going to come back with a report on a living wage and review and the implications, I guess, budget-wise and through the municipality. Okay, so we've got those 3 recommendations, moved by Councillor Carrio, second by Councillor Lococo. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Okay, was there any more? Okay, so that's it for that. And
The repairs, Your Worship, is the gas
is that?
Second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Ioannoni, that we move on the repairs, emergency repairs at the Gale Center. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. We'll get the compressor up and running, and now we'll go back to the planning portion of our agenda. So I would now ask the city clerk to introduce the next item on the agenda.
A public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city's zoning bylaw to permit a 3-story, 18-unit apartment building at 5873 Brookfield Avenue. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on December 21st, 2018, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passing of the zoning bylaw amendment or would like to preserve their opportunity to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets that are located just outside the council chamber.
Thank you very much. I now ask Mr. Hurlovich, our Director of Planning, to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. This property is a lot that's approximately a little larger than half a hectare. Bill, can you advance the slides because this doesn't seem to be working? Thank you. So it's located on the west side of Brookfield Avenue, just south of Lundy's Lane. There is a motel facing Lundy's Lane. The Falls Manor Restaurant is to the west, and then there are residential housing units to the south and to the east of this property. The property was formerly occupied by the Broadway Motel. If we take a look at the next slide, this is the proposal. So north is actually to the right on this page. So Falls Manor is on the top of the page, so west is to the top. So the applicant is proposing a 3-story building with 18 residential units in it. He's requested that the property be rezoned to accommodate this development. It's currently zoned tourist commercial. In addition, he's looking to change the rear, what we would call the rear yard setback, because Brookfield is the frontage. The rear yard, which faces west, normally would require a larger side yard or rear yard, and they're looking to provide 4.4 meters. They're proposed it's 7.5 meters minimum on the south side, that's the left side of the page, about 8.5 meters on the north side. So a good separation from the residential developments to the south and the commercial units to the north. As well, in order, this property, if we use the standard R4 zoning, the lot area requirements would be 133 square meters per unit. And that would permit somewhere between 17 and 18 units. So we've rounded that up to a total of 18 units, which results in 130 square meters per unit of lot area rather than 133. That's fairly minimal and would not have any recognizable impact. As well, then the applicant is looking to be able to put his waste disposal enclosure in the parking lot. This is technically the front yard. However, it would be enclosed with a wooden screen, and it is next to the tourist commercial development. So we do not see an impact with that proposal. The property does provide adequate parking spaces, and rather than providing 35% open space on the lot, they would have 31% open space on the lot. Now this is going to work. So as I said, the applicant's looking for an R5B zone with those site-specific provisions I just outlined. We did hold a neighborhood meeting in December. The residents came out. They were supportive. After all, they had lived with the Broadway Motel. So they certainly recognize this development as being an asset. They were concerned about the elevations and the windows facing the south. They were told those would be kept to a minimum because of cost. The parking is a surface parking lot, but as I said, it does provide all of the requirements of our city bylaws. The units will be largely two-bedroom apartments in the building. It does meet the provincial growth policies for 40% of our residential development occurring in our built boundaries, and that it does meet our built boundary requirements for the city. Provides an appropriate mix of housing types. The proposed apartments are a form of residential intensification that's promoted by the province. The land use conversion from commercial use to residential use requires a record of site condition. The applicant has filed that with the ministry, and we're just waiting for the record or the acknowledgement letter to come back from the ministry. The region suggests, because they're responsible for provincial functions in this regard, they suggest either a holding provision or using the site plan process. We think this acknowledgement letter is imminent, and so therefore we believe that site plan approval would be appropriate, and that would take, once we go through the whole zoning process, so we're probably still a month away from finalizing that, and then it's probably 3 or 4 months for the site plan process. So I think adequate time for that letter to come in. The official plan designates the land's tourist commercial, but we do have policies that provide that residential development can be appropriate, and we have determined that this is an appropriate scale development. It would be a 3-story building, which would be a transition between the higher elevations that are permitted on Lundy's Lane and the residential development to the south. The density is appropriate. It's 76 units per hectare, which is in the range expected along Lundy's Lane. I mentioned the landscaped areas along the parking lot on Brookfield and then adjacent to the residential houses provides an appropriate buffer. Overall, we have a 2.2% vacancy rate, but when we're looking at one bedroom and single family, single bedroom units, there is a 0% rate. This is the elevation of the proposed building, so we believe an attractive addition to the streetscape. The zoning, I've already basically reviewed that, R5 density, the minimum rear yard 4.4 meters. the area of 130 square meters per unit, and allowing the waste disposal in the front yard. I think we basically covered all of these other areas. The site plan would be used to control servicing and grading of the property, landscaping and the lighting plans. And we are still, as I said, waiting for that MOE certificate. So therefore, staff is recommending it as the application conforms with the provincial policy, the regional policies, complies with the city's official plan. It's compatible with the adjacent residential development in terms of building height, setback, and the provisions of landscaping. The requested R5B zone permits the requested regulations as they're compatible with the surrounding development, and therefore staff is recommending that council approves the zoning bylaw to rezone the property as an R5B, which permit a 3-story building with 18 units subject to the modifications outlined in the report. Those are the highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Hurlovich. Are there any questions of council for Mr. Hurlovich? I think it's a huge improvement over what we had there before and the big problems that we had on Brookfield. Members of the public are advised that a failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the local planning appeal tribunal dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheet will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per section 3419 of the Planning Act. Council will now hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw amendment. Is there anyone here other than the applicant? Okay, seeing none, council will now hear from the applicant or his representative.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name's Frank LaPena. I'm the owner of the property. I don't really have much more to add to the presentation, so we'll keep it short.
Any questions for Mr. LaPena? Yes, Councilor Coco.
Through the mayor to the speaker. It is a great opportunity for us here in Niagara Falls to have another 18 units coming into our housing market, so thank you so much for that. When I saw the presentation, I was thinking about affordable housing, and I was speaking with staff, and Mr. Hurlovich gave me a great lesson on the affordable housing, what we can do at our level. And unfortunately, at the city, we can't really do anything. But I do encourage you to contact the region because there are some subsidies that you can look at, and there might be some funding. So thank you so much for putting this into our community.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, if there's no further questions for the applicant, the public meeting. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Councilor Thompson. Okay. The public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. Councilor Thompson.
I just was going to stand up and thank Mr. LaPena for taking on this property. We all know what was there before, the residents, what they had to put up with on a continual basis. And when he acquired it, tore the building down quickly, cleaned it all up. Thank you for what you've done. And I'll make the motion for the approval of that very appropriate development.
Absolutely. Moved by Councilor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Kerrio that we approve the recommendation. If there's no further discussion, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much, Mr. LaPena. Good job.
Great to see you here tonight.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. 8.2, if you're looking on the agenda, AM 2008-18. I would now ask our city clerk to introduce that next item on the agenda.
Public meeting is now being convened to consider a proposed amendment to the city's zoning bylaw to convert the existing 5-story hotel, known as the Peninsula Inn, into an 85-unit retirement home. This is located at 7373 Niagara Square Drive. Notice was given by first-class mail in accordance with the Planning Act on Friday, December 21st, 2018, and by posting a sign on the property in question. Anyone who wants notice of the passing of the zoning bylaw amendment or would like to preserve their opportunity to appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal shall leave their name on the sign-in sheets that are located outside the council chamber.
Thank you very much. And now I'll ask our Director of Planning, Mr. Hurlovich, to explain the purpose and the reason for the proposed bylaw amendment.
Thank you, Worship. This property is located in that area just where the entrance to the QEW is at Niagara Square. It is the Peninsula Inn. It's almost 5 acres in size. It has a 5-story hotel on the property now. There's a gazebo and pergola on the property where wedding ceremonies are traditionally held. To the west of that property are 3 vacant parcels of land. To the north, across McLeod Road, is the McBain Center, and south is the Niagara Square Shopping Center. The applicant is looking to retain the current tourist commercial zone. It also has specific provisions for a 13-story, 240-room hotel on the property. I would like to retain that as well. And there are holding provisions that require that future development contribute towards the QEW McLeod Road interchange. Those are the works that have gone on the last couple of years. That policy runs out in 2020. So we have a couple more years where any new development beyond what we have will have to contribute. So the applicant is looking to add a retirement home as a permitted use to the tourist commercial zone. He wants to retain his current 13-story height provisions, but he also wants to recognize the current height of 19.5 meters. The present height was actually granted through a variance, so we would recognize that through zoning since we're rezoning the property. He also wants to recognize those accessory buildings, and he would like to remove the holding provision for the financial contributions as it affects the conversion. We did hold an open house, no area of residents showed up. Again, the existing 5-story hotel occupies a central part of this 5-acre property, large amount of parking, a fair amount of open space and amenities on the west side, the left side of the existing building. So the existing building is on the screen now. So the proposal does comply with the provincial policies that require 40% of our residential development to occur within the city's built-up boundaries. The proposed retirement home would assist in meeting those targets. The official plan designates the lands as tourist commercial within the Niagara Square Retail District. A conversion to the and the reuse of the building is considered to be compatible. It is a density that's comparable to a low-rise apartment building, and the retirement home is not expected to generate excessive traffic, and there will be no adverse impact on commercial traffic patterns. The city has received confirmation from the trustee, that's the person who collects the money for the QEW McLeod Road interchange improvements, that they do not require a payment for the conversion from a hotel to a retirement residence, but any new buildings would be required to contribute. So if they were to build that 13-story, 240-unit hotel, they would have to make contributions, basically the difference between what they have now and what they would have. The site-specific zoning is to add that retirement home. I've mentioned that. The retirement home would be additional housing choice in the area. It maintains the approvals for the 13 stories, plus the height, the pergola, and the gazebo. There is a site plan agreement on the property now, and the proposal does not increase or change the usability. Therefore, there will be no changes to that site plan agreement. The application will assist in meeting the city's intensification targets. It will complement and enhance the Niagara Square District. It's an adaptive reuse of the existing building and infrastructure. The density of the retirement home is comparable to a low-rise apartment building. The applicant has demonstrated through noise studies and a phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment. The property is suitable for residential use. The existing hotel and accessory structures have existed, so there's compatibility that has been achieved. The existing infrastructure can support the development. retirement home will not generate additional traffic, and the trustee has indicated that no financial contributions are required. Therefore, we are recommending that council approve the zoning amendment to the TC zone to add a retirement home as a permitted use, which would allow for 85 private living units. I would retain the 13-story hotel rights and would recognize the existing building at 19.5 meters. A site-specific bylaw to exclude the H for this conversion would be brought forward as the trustee has indicated that a payment would not be required for the conversion. Those are the highlights.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hurlovich. Any questions for Mr. Hurlovich? Okay, seeing none, members of the public are advised that a failure to make an oral or written submission at this public meeting will result in the local planning appeal tribunal dismissing any referral that it receives. Failure to sign the sign-in sheets will result in staff rejecting an appeal as per section 3419 of the Planning Act. Council will now hear from anyone other than the applicant who wishes to address council. Is there anyone here on this matter other than the applicant who wishes to address council? Seeing no one, council will now hear from the applicant or his or her representative.
Thank you, Council and Mr. Mayor. Not a whole lot to add. I just want to thank the city staff for supporting us in this application. And we're looking forward to providing some additional options for seniors in the area and increasing year-round employment as well. And I'm looking forward to a supportive vote from council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of council for the applicant? Okay, then the public meeting with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is now concluded. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo and seconded by Councillor Thompson to move the recommendation. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's approved. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're gonna, I think we're done with planning now? Yeah, so we shoot down to, thank you.
I would move the consent unless anyone wants to pull something out, Your Worship.
Hang on a sec, let me just get there.
Yep.
Second the consent.
There we go. Okay. The only one that we did, if I could, just the one regarding the lady, regarding the coyotes.
Sure.
It was suggested there won't. Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
Do we have that?
It's in the communication.
Yeah, it's in communications. Okay. We have a motion by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Carrier, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Oh, that's approved. That was nice. That was nice. Okay, so now we're down to communications. Okay, let me just find it. There we go. Oh, resolutions. Do we have a resolution there regarding in camera, Mr. Clerk?
Nothing on the camera.
Okay. Why am I, I'm under bylaws? What do
Should be
I?
on 11.
Should be on number 11.
Yeah, okay, hang on, sorry.
And I will move
There
that
we
we
go.
receive the third quarter report. from the
Okay.
Niagara Regional Housing.
Okay, moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Strange, that we receive the third quarter report from Niagara Regional Housing. All those in favor? That's approved. Knights of Columbus requesting flag raising at City Hall and the Knights of Columbus Week, April 23rd to May the 1st. Moved by Councillor Strange, second by Councillor Dabrowski. All those in favor? That's approved, thank you. We've got the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They have a recommendation that the suggestion is regarding the growth plan, that it be recommended that we move it to, or refer it to staff to come back with a report.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, is this part and parcel of what Mr. Hurlovitz sent to us in an email in regards to the area planners getting together and discussing what the government's plans are in regards to making changes to the provincial growth plan?
Mr. Hurlovich?
Yes, it is, excuse me.
Okay. Then I just had a couple of comments, Your Worship, if I could. So I think it was back in maybe September of 2018 when I brought forward a motion that we ask other area municipalities whether or not they were having a hard time hitting the intensification guidelines that were in the provincial growth plan. I think at the time I made some comments in regards to my personal feelings are that a lot of the infilling targets are really out of touch with what people expect. You know, people that are living on larger size lots don't expect that someone is going to come in with a development next to them, and that development be very intense in terms of its density. It seems now like and that motion was passed by council and went on to region. I don't know where it is right now. But it seems now like the province is looking at intensifying the 2017 provincial growth plan even more. So maybe I could ask Mr. Hurlovich to explain two parts of your email. I know that you had made notes. One of them was on the Greenfield, where you said that they were falling back to the 2006 levels. And the other one was on the intensification, where you noted that they were going from 40% to 50%. Perhaps you can just explain to council what those two specific items would mean in our city.
Mr. Hurlovich?
Well, it's everything is around intensification and reusing or better utilizing our land and our infrastructure. So the previous, or the 2017 growth plan basically proposed that our intensification targets were to be 80%, which we basically wrote the provinces and told them that that was entirely unrealistic. So dropping that to 50% is much closer to a more realistic number. But yes, we're still having trouble meeting our intensification targets. I think we're in around about 30% of new housing, somewhere between 30 and 35% of our new housing is actually being built in our built boundaries. So we are falling short of our 40% now. The 50% for the people and jobs per hectare, again, is a target for greenfields, so that we can get a mix of jobs and people. The idea is, again, to try and create complete communities. So rather than just having large areas of residential development, we would also have areas of employment, making sure that these areas are walkable and so on. So there's a philosophy that as we increase densities, we create more walkable cities, because people will walk to shops and parks and facilities, and and we could better utilize our infrastructure and our transit. So that's basically the philosophy behind that. It is a change for a community like Niagara Falls, where probably 70% of our housing development is in the form of detached dwellings, what people call single-family dwellings. So it does represent a large shift in terms of where we're going. But I'm not sure whether it was Councillor Lococo or Iannone who circulated us information today regarding climate change and accountability. And certainly this is all tied up in that same thing. So there's greater accountability and so on. So yes, those targets are high. If council wishes, I certainly can bring that message back to our area planners and ask them to drop those figures yet again. As I say, they were as high as 80% at one point. So we're happy that they've come down.
Councillor?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I guess my question is, are they still at 80%? Because I thought in the document that you sent us, through you, Your Worship, that you had written on the side of it, that this would be up from 40%. Are they at 40% right now, or are they at 80%?
The new growth plan was at 80%, but it would be up from the old number of 40%.
So it would go from 40 to 50?
Yes.
Yeah. Your Worship, I guess then, and I don't really have an issue with very high density in new areas. I think that's something that people accept when they purchase their homes and go into there. The ones that I have a hard time with are the infilling projects. And I guess with the infilling projects, a lot of times we feel like we're disconnected from the people that we represent. because people come down to object to the infilling projects. They feel that there's too much density going beside them, especially given the character of their surrounding properties. And we really don't have much say because the provincial growth plan then gets pushed down to the region, which then gets pushed down to our official plan and becomes our policy. So it's difficult to go against your policy and side with the residents, but it's something that the residents expect. So maybe through you to Mr. Herlick, what I could ask for then is municipalities be given the right to have a range of intensification that they can, I guess, recommend where they see fit. I know there's different areas in the city, your worship, where you know, perhaps there's a 6-story building that wants to be built. The residents really don't want a 6-story building next to them. So those are the types of intensification that I'd rather stay away from that are inside of our official plan. And if we had a range, then maybe perhaps we could be in control of some of the recommendations as we go forward, and it wouldn't be so black and white.
So, Mr. Erlovich, is that, excuse me, possible that we could go forward with a range?
I will certainly look into that. You know, in some respects, our official plan currently does that, so that we have, so for instance, our high-density development is between 75 units and 100 units a hectare. Medium density is between 50 and 75 units a hectare. Low density is between basically 10 units and 50 units a hectare. 10 units a hectare would probably be your typical single-family subdivision. So certainly a medium-density development, something you know, in the range of actually, you know, the development on Brookfield today, I think, was in the range of 76 units per hectare. So that gives you some idea. Basically, 3-story building, 18 units on half an acre of land. So, you know, small developments like that seem to be able to, you know, find a degree of compatibility. So, you know, the medium density is, or the higher density, so 75 units to 100 units. So that would be the kind of project would be on the low end. Certainly, we see once we get up to 100 units a hectare, it's difficult to achieve that form of development without underground parking. And so at that level, it really changes the character. So in order to provide the underground parking, that the buildings get higher and the number of units become greater. Typically, we don't see that in the established areas, but we do see more of these, you know, 76 unit hectare forms of development. But we can work on a range. I'll come back to council and report.
Do you want to make the recommendation? Motion. Okay, motion by Councillor Peter Angelo that the matter be referred to staff to provide regular reports back to council and also ranges. Seconded by Councillor Campbell. There's no further discussion. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Item 11.4, proclamation request from the National Eating Disorder Center. Thank you. Requesting February 1st to 7th be Eating Disorder Awareness Week, moved by Councillor Iannone, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you. Item 11.5, Town of Oakville, Town of Georgeville, Georgina.
I'd like to speak to that.
Okay, yeah, that we received. Okay, so there's, all right, so Councillor Iannone, you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think even though Schedule 10 was withdrawn from Bill 66, I'd like this council to go on record as having been opposed to it through a resolution. I read the resolutions that were submitted to us, and I think Orangeville's was closest to something. I had actually written one for the last council meeting and totally forgot. So I apologize to the people who I said I would have raised it. They were critical that we hadn't, and I said that was totally my fault because I had said I would and I didn't. So I'm gonna just use the Town of Orangeville's resolution. Whereas the protection of the integrity of the green belt is a paramount concern for our residents, and whereas the continued legislation protection of our water, groundwater, surface water, and waterways is vitally important for the current and future environmental health of our community. And whereas significant concerns have been raised by residents, community leaders, environmental organizations such as Environment Canada Law Association, and the provisions within Bill 66 will weaken environmental protections, as it will enable municipalities to pass open for business zoning bylaws that do not have to comply with important provincial environmental statutes. And whereas an open for business bylaw may be approved without public consultation, and whereas provisions within Bill 66 may allow exemptions from municipal official plans, and whereas the City of Niagara Falls official plan represents not only a significant investment of taxpayers' resources, but reflects our community's collective vision for its current and future planning. And whereas our official plan clearly designates lands that are environmentally protective. And whereas our official plan also provides clearly designated land to meet future employment land needs. And therefore be it resolved that the City of Niagara Falls opposes plan changes to the Planning Act in the proposed Bill 66 that may allow for an open business planning bylaw, and that the Government of Ontario, they already have, but I just want this to be on record, that the Government of Ontario be requested to reconsider the proposed changes to the Planning Act included in Bill 66, which speak to the creation of the open for business planning bylaw, and notwithstanding the future adoption of, I'm sorry? Oh, I thought you were speaking to me. And the notwithstanding the future adoption of Bill 66, the City of Niagara Falls will not exercise the powers granted in it to schedule Bill 10 or any successor sections or schedules to pass open for business planning bylaws. And that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Housing and Affairs, the Honourable Christine Elliott, how about just out to communities everywhere, like the rest of them, and that a copy be sent to the municipalities of AMO and all the Ontario municipalities for their consideration, and I so move that resolution.
Okay, we have a motion of a resolution by Councillor Ioannoni. Do we have a seconder?
I thought there was a motion.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't realize Councillor Kerrio made a motion
I just made a motion for the recommendation of staff, which is just to receive the file.
to receive it. So I didn't realize, I thought you were just commenting on it, Councillor.
Oh.
So I didn't go to his, I didn't finish off his motion. So before.
Can that be a friendly amendment?
What, well, his is to, did you want to?
I would just suggest to be a separate motion. Let's-
Okay.
Let's receive what's on the agenda first, and then we
Okay.
could make Councillor Ioannoni's motion.
Okay, so
We
motion,
still have to do with the others.
what's that?
We still have to do with the others.
Okay, yeah, the other,
Well, the other one's in that recommendation, so
okay. So the motion.
I just received the file.
Okay, moved by Councillor Kerrio to receive and file, seconded by Councillor Campbell. Call that vote. All those in favor?
And then I'll move my resolution.
Okay, and that's approved. Okay, and there's a motion by Councillor Ioannoni and seconded by Councillor Lococo for the resolution. Yes, Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, Your Worship, I just want to state for the record that I am opposed to Bill 66, but the government has already withdrawn Schedule 10. What the government was asking to do really was to set different rules from municipalities to municipalities. They were going to allow municipalities to opt out of legislative requirements based on, I guess, employment opportunities. It's something that perhaps, last meeting or even the meeting before, it should have been brought to our attention. Someone should have come and said that we were opposed. At this point now, to me, it seems a little late for us to simply pass a motion that's going to go to the provincial government to tell them that they were wrong to suggest it in the first place. So I'm not going to support it.
Okay, any other comments or questions of the resolution? Okay, thank you, then we'll call the vote. Moved by Councillor Ioannoni, second by Councillor Lococo for the resolution based on Orangevilles. Call the vote, all those in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, so that motion does not pass. Okay, so we'll move to 11.6, City of St. Catharines ban on plastic straws. The recommendation is council receive the correspondence for information.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Kerrio, second by Councillor Pietrangelo. All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. Niagara Region Waste Management Public Works Base Services Contract. So the recommendation is to refer this to staff. And for any of you that have been maybe following along, there are some recommendations right now that we, at the region, that we go to every other week garbage pickup and also clear bags for garbage. I've received a number of irate feedback from residents that feel that's infringement on their privacy and they're not in favor. So they're asking recommendations to send to staff, but were there any comments or anything anyone would add before we move this to staff? Councillor Campbell, and then Peter Angelo, then Lococo.
Just one question, I might have missed it. What are they gonna do about recycling?
They're gonna leave that the same. That'll be weekly, and compostable will be weekly as well. And then the garbage will be every other week.
It'll be nasty in the summer.
Yes. You know, and it's interesting, I was speaking with my brother in Cambridge, and there they put out 5 bags every week. And they don't have a limit, and every other week they can put out their household waste as well, every other week. It's very interesting. We always look to Waterloo as one of our examples, and yet I'd be very curious to know what other areas are doing about this. Councillor, who did I have next? Councillor Carrio?
I was going to move the recommendation, and I'm assuming that the staff will bring back
Yep.
information to us.
Well, thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. So you may have seen in the correspondence, they're looking for feedback. They said you could have feedback up to the end of February 20th, I think it was. So our plan was to have a report back with information in it for you to be able to go through step by step what your comments would be on the various recommendations. We'll have that at the next meeting on February 12th for you.
Was there other questions, Councillor Pietrangelo?
Yeah, Your Worship, the Region's Public Works came to our last council meeting and made a presentation on waste collection. And there were some questions asked then by different councillors as well as myself. I just wanted I guess the financial numbers that they gave us validated so that when staff come back, we can have some concrete numbers. Because what I took away from their presentation 2 weeks ago was that if we were to go to an every other week collection, it would likely be a 5% savings in our garbage bill. And I don't know really that the cut in service really justifies the financial end of it. So there were some other comments that were made in regards to clear bags. And the other thing, Your Worship, is that I don't believe that it's part of the region's budget. It should just be an in and out service that they provide. In other words, what they charge municipalities is the price of the contract. So therefore, in my opinion, they should be really listening to municipalities and what they have to say, because we're the ones that should be driving the contract. The region's only the one that puts out the RFP and administers it, but it's the people of Niagara Falls and all the other municipalities that pay for it.
Good point, good point. Councillor Lococo.
In all of our discussions, they've talked about clear bags, but in the third report on page 5, it talks about mandatory use of clear bags with an option for a opaque privacy bag to be placed inside of the clear bag. So I know that addresses some people's concerns about that clear bag, so I just wanted to bring that up because that's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah, I saw that, and I know it's awkward because some people, maybe they don't want their neighbors to know that they're wearing Depends undergarments or whatever problem that they have. They don't want everybody to know. So, and the other thing of interest, and I'd like to maybe in the staff report we can get follow up on this. I know they said our diversion rate is around 50%, and they're trying to save capacity at the landfill. But as I understand it, the landfills take capacity from other municipalities. So if it isn't our garbage, at the at the Walker facility, and if Walker takes it from other municipalities, I mean, it's going to not fill up with our garbage. It'll fill up with Toronto's garbage or some other jurisdiction's garbage, because everybody's got the challenge of getting rid of their garbage. That's why they're looking at these incineration units or trying to figure out where to put it. So I thought I wouldn't want to conserve space just so that they could sell more to other municipalities. So something I'd be curious to have our staff look at. They've got a couple of landfills still active in the region does. Humberstone, and, but the big one's Walker. And, anyway, so, did we get the motion already? I can't remember.
Refer to staff.
Okay, moved by Counselor Carrio and seconded by Counselor Campbell. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved. Thank you. Regional Niagara's amended smoking bylaw, and the recommendation is that we refer the matter for a staff report. Moved by Counselor Pietrangelo, seconded by Counselor Thompson. What's that? It was here tonight. Oh, sorry, we're having some side conversations. What?
The report that was on the consent agenda was prepared prior to receiving this information from the region.
So we've dealt with it? Okay, so do we need to refer it then? Okay, well, so we'll just receive for information? You good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor? That's approved, thank you. 11.9 is National Poetry Month. Okay, moved by Counselor Pietrangelo, second by Counselor Iannoni. That Counselor Thompson start off each meeting with a poem.
He's got it right. But he's got it
Actually, I was going to suggest during the month, maybe they could have start off our meeting with some poetry.
Somebody to complain.
Just can't start off with roses are red and violets are blue, right? That's all. Okay, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor? It's approved. Thank you. Now this one, if I could just jump in, this is the one about the coyotes I was on earlier. So there's a request from Lauren Van Patter. She's a student at Queen's. She's doing her PhD, and she's requesting the city's permission to mount cameras specifically for coyotes. And of course, the concern is privacy. And she assured us that any kind of video capturing of any human would be immediately deleted, but there isn't going to be time to the next council meeting to review this. So we were hoping maybe that council could make a motion that would allow her to come to an agreement with staff, if they're able to, that staff are comfortable with, because that we won't have time to bring this back here. Okay, moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Iannoni.
She could also put them in the public streets now, because people are posting on Facebooks of coyotes walking right down the middle of their street.
Yeah.
And dogs being, don't let your dog out because your dog will be snatched by a coyote. So she'd be applicable to pretty much put them everywhere.
Pretty much. Okay, if there's no questions, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. 11:11, Niagara Region interim levy dates and amounts. Recommendation that we receive for information. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Campbell. All those in favor? That's approved, thank you. 11:12, Niagara Region Vacancy Program. Regional Council recently approved a report to deal with the commercial, industrial, and vacant unit rebate process. It's already been approved by the region. Yeah, just to receive it. Moved by Councillor Carrio, second by Councillor Strange. All those in favor? That's approved. So now we'll go back to our appointments. Mr. Clerk, we've got some tallies.
Yeah, there's a couple of matters to deal with. It's the council appointments to the committees, and then of course the citizen appointments. So let's just deal with the council appointments first. Everyone was canvassed as to what committees they had preference for, and we were able to resolve a lot of that as far as through a nomination process, with the exception of Project Share. Fortunately, for Project Share's concerned, that we do have two councillors interested currently. That is Councillors Campbell and Iannoni. And they did check with Project Share, and unfortunately their terms of reference only allow for one. So if both councillors still want to have their names put forward, it'll be the will of council, but we do have ballots prepared should council like to vote by ballot or show of hand or...
Alternates? I don't know.
Well,
An alternate, is that what you said?
Alternates? And they decide who goes, like from meeting to meeting, I don't know.
you gotta have somebody who's there.
So what's the, first of all, let's go to both people, Councillor Iannoni, Councillor Campbell. Do both of you want to have a ballot, or how do you want to deal with this?
I have a ballot. I presently sit on Project Chair, and I'd like to continue.
Okay, all right, so I guess we're gonna pass out the ballots. Yeah, Councillor Strange?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, is there any way that we can contact, like, I know it's through the bylaws of Project Share, but we have two good counselors that want to go on Project Share. And Project Share is such, obviously, an important committee, and we do a lot of great stuff. They do a lot of great stuff for our community and help people. You know, I would just hate to see, you know, two good people and then you only allowed to choose one. Is there any way possible, like maybe the clerk can fill us in, that we could possibly?
I have reached out to them this week to suggest that we had more than one, and the response back from Diane Corcoran was that there was only space as per their terms of reference for one.
In other words,
whether they-
one was
whether-
too many. That's what she said, too many counselors. Too many politicians. Okay, so we're gonna pass those along, we'll get those.
While those are coming in, I'll just read off the rest of the committees. First of all, our internal committees, Culture Committee, we will be appointing, or council will be appointing. I'll ask for a motion, or have the mayor ask for a motion when we're finished here. But Culture Committee, Councilors Lococo and Campbell. For Recreation Committee, Councilors Dabrowski and Strange. Accessibility Advisory Committee, no council appointment. For the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee, Councilor Strange. Property Standards Committee, no councilor appointment. Municipal Heritage Committee, no councilor appointment. Park in the City, Councilor Peter Angelo. Committee of Adjustment, Councilor Peter Angelo.
And Councilor Strange for the purpose.
Councilor Strange, did you have an interest in the Park in the City?
I did, I'd like to
Okay.
remain on the committee if I can. I thought I'd put that in the.
Thank you. And the Seniors Advisory Committee, Councilors Dabrowski and Campbell. For the external committees, the Niagara District Airport Commission would be Councilor Lococo. Niagara Falls Library Board, Councilor Iannoni. The Winter Festival of Lights, they were looking for two, it would be Councilors Lococo and Campbell. Niagara Falls Tourism, looking for the mayor plus two, it would be Councilors Dabrowski, Thompson, and Mayor Diodati. Niagara Falls Illumination Board, Councilor Dabrowski. Niagara Parks Commission, we decided on that last meeting as Councilor Carrio. Project Share will be read out in just a moment. And the Convention Center Board, Councilor Thompson. For the business improvement areas, downtown BIA would be Councilor Lococo. The Clifton Hill and Lundy's Lane BIA, no councilor appointments at this time. The Victoria Center BIA, Councilor Dabrowski. And Fallsview BRA, Councilor Thompson.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
I'll go on the Clifton Hill. Yeah.
And Bill, does the downtown BIA, there was three of us last time. What is the limit?
Clifton Hill doesn't have it.
They haven't established a
And I'd
limit,
like to go on that one.
and that was for downtown.
Downtown.
Did I mention it?
Clifton Hill.
Currently none. Thank you. Okay, so I'll read out the BIAs one more time then. Downtown BIA, Councilors Lococo and Iannoni. Clifton Hill BIA, Councilor Strange. Lundy's Lane BIA, Councilor Peter Angelo. Victoria Center BIA, Councilor Dabrowski, and Fallsview as Councilor Thompson. Last category, the regional or upper tier committees. The Adult Entertainment Appeal Committee, we have Councilors Thompson, Strange, Campbell, and Mayor Diodati. The Transportation Steering Committee, Councilor Iannoni. And currently, as of earlier today, we did not have anyone for the Linking Niagara Transit Committee. Was there any interest from council?
Yeah, myself.
Okay, so Councilors Dabrowski and the mayor. And just going back to Project Share. Councilor Campbell, 3 votes. Councilor Iannoni, 6 votes. So I would suggest through the mayor, if you want to entertain a motion, what I'll do is make sure that there's the appointment bylaws coming back to the next council to make it official.
So a motion to approve the following appointments?
Yes.
Looking for a motion from, moved by Councilor Iannoni, seconded by Councilor Dabrowski. that we approve the appointments that were just read aloud by the clerk. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved.
Thank you. Moving on to the citizen appointments. Culture Committee. Through the tally here, we were looking for electing up to 12 members, and there is a tie for the 12th spot. So it's the will of council. You could decide to only do 11. This is for Culture Committee, or you could appoint up to 13. A number of these committees do typically have a range, and that's so that, for example, if you do decide to appoint the 13th person here, then should there be a vacancy over the 4-year term and they drop down to 12 or 11, we usually take the advice of the council liaison, and if they don't feel that the vacancy needs to be filled, they're still within their mandated term or mandated numbers. I'll read off who the 13 are. Sherry Armstrong.
Let's just say 13.
Sure.
You know, as being the representative there was some discussion around the table that we needed to reduce the number of members that we were previously working with, and we decided to drop it to 12 and as the maximum. So I think we should be making that decision before we read out names.
Sure. What we could
So
do is...
I'll make a motion that it be restricted to the 12, as requested by the
What are you
committee.
saying, either 11 or 13?
Because there's a tie for 12.
Because
I'll
there's
make
a
it
tie
11.
for 12th, we could drop those
No,
last
I
two
would
and just go
suggest
with 11.
11. Motion for 11.
Okay, moved by Councillor Campbell that we change the structure of the Culture Committee to be 11 members. Do we have a seconder for that motion?
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Ioannoni. All those in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, so it's going to be 11.
Okay, so the 11 that could be, or would be appointed to the Culture Committee are the following: Sherry Armstrong, Deborah Attenborough, Evelyn Bailey, Priscilla Brett, Dino Fazio, Angela Minotti, Margaret Mingle, Lori Moffett, Diane Monroe, Patrick Sirianni, and Gordon West. And that was the Culture Committee. Moving on to Committee of Adjustment, we're electing up to 5 members. We do have the top 5 here. They are Paul Campagato, Peter Colasmo, Damian Frank Franz, Joseph Morazic, and Lou Stranges. The Municipal Heritage Committee, we're electing up to 11 members. Sorry, up to 7 members. The top 7, Paula Burketto, Gary Burke, Mark Iamorano, Len Inkster, Margaret Mingle, Cindy Mockery, and David Vida. Niagara District Airport Commission electing 2 members, James Dietenbeck and John Ventresca. Niagara Falls Library Board electing 8 members, Ann Andres-Jones, John Anstruther, Damian Frank Franz, Kevin Letourneau, Barbara Ness, Lynn Revesi, Tim Treadwell, and Kathy Tsianstoulis.
Good luck.
Thank you. Park in this, the last one? Councillor Strange might help me with that one.
Okay,
Kathy. Kathy T.
Greek goddess.
Park in the City Committee, electing up to 12. And we do have 12. John Anstruther, John Brocado, Daniel Caccino, Sheila Fleming, DeLuca, Frank Four, Audrey Fraser, Janet Hassel, Paisley January Poole, Michael Lucic, Patricia Mascarin, Carly Milani, Thomas Mingle. Property Standards Committee electing up to 4, Frank DeLuca, Anna Lee, Lee Mooney, and Martin Tuchuk. Recreation Committee. Same situation where there is a tie for 12th. So if council wants to follow.
We asked the two reps that are on
Tie for 12.
here. You and you.
Yeah, 13 or 11?
Is it 13 or 11?
We could do, if you want to appoint 12, you would have to go with 13 with the tie, or you could go down to 11.
Okay.
I'm fine as long
We
as
asked the two
Chris.
reps.
I'm fine with 13. Sorry? I'm fine. Move 13.
Okay, motion by Councillor Kerrio, seconded by Councillor Strange, that we change the makeup of the Recreation Committee to be 13 members. All those, in-
Your worship, would it be just for this election now, and then if someone goes off during the term, it goes back to 12? But do we change the whole?
That's kind of the idea with these committees, since there is a range of 8 to 12 typically, that even if it was at 12 and someone were to drop out for whatever reason over that term, if the committee felt that they could still operate at 11, you wouldn't necessarily have to fill that vacancy. I would think those same rules would apply here, that you're appointing 13 for the sake of the tie. If someone were to drop out, the committee could still operate with 12.
okay, so it's for this term of council. We're not changing the makeup permanently.
Yes, unless someone drops out.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we'll call that vote, so move it to 13 for now for Recreation Committee. All those in favor? Okay, that's approved.
Okay, those 13 names then are Vincent Michael Audibert, Bonnie Brady, Eniko Besdale, Joseph Caverson, Sheila DeLuca, Rob Desson, Paisley Janvary Poole, Gary Kraus, Anna Lee, Donna Mills, Lori Primo, Vito Scaringi, and Terry Thompson. Moving on, Seniors Advisory Committee, electing up to 8 members. We do have an even 8. Those would be Noreen Bald, Francine Beatty, Stuart Black, Karen Fraser, Ewald Kuzira, Wendy McPherson, Otto Penner, and Ann Wiley. And the last committee would be the Mayor's Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Your worship, were there a lot of people that voted on that one?
Not all of council voted.
We're not gonna, is that the one we were gonna refer?
Yeah, I didn't that's what I thought.
Mine is right here, I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't feel mine.
Didn't either.
Okay, well, if we want to get a motion from the floor then, if
Move
that's
to
council's wish.
Okay, moved by
Questions?
Councillor Iannoni, seconded by Councillor Pietrangelo.
Yeah, your worship, I guess I was gonna ask about the makeup of that committee as well. I noticed that there's a lot of people who are identified in the list of those who applied as having a disability. And I would just, I think I would feel bad in excluding anyone. You know, we were asked to pick 10 people, and some of us didn't do that because we wanted to be more inclusive. So I guess my motion would be to pass it back to staff to look at coming up with a way that that's what we can do, is be more inclusive so that we can include more people with disabilities.
Okay, so we've got the, yeah, Councillor Lococo.
The other thing I'd like to add is to get applications from the people who did not submit them. It was very hard to choose if you didn't know their qualifications.
Okay, so we can add that as well. You comfortable with that? Okay. Okay, so we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. Thank you. Is that all?
Bylaws?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just suggest that council make one motion to accept them, all the names that were read out, just so that some of these committees can get moving. Technically, your confirmatory bylaw tonight will make those appointments official, but we will bring a bylaw back, an appointment bylaw for next meeting.
Okay, thank you. So moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pietrangelo, that we make all the appointments official. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved, and congratulations to all those that were selected. Now we move on to the bylaws.
Just before we jump there, the one resolution that you're referring to about in camera,
Yes.
this one here is actually for next meeting, since council will be meeting a little bit earlier. We thought we would get council to pass that resolution tonight to go in camera for an education session.
Okay. Can we get a motion? Moved by Councilor Pietrangelo, second by Councilor Thompson, for resolution to go in camera at the next meeting, February the 12th. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you for that. Councilor Carey.
Your Worship, to do with the committees, during the educational session, it was brought up about having a discussion or coming up with a fair way to compensate some of the councilors for committees. Could we have an idea when that might come back to us? I don't want it to get lost like it did 4 years ago.
Mr. Seo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a draft done up. Mr. Dark's not here tonight. Our intention would be to have that at the February 12th meeting.
Okay.
We're going to have two reports there, one dealing with the compensation. The second one was the grants or council having to deal with requests that come to council for tables and things of that nature.
Thank you.
So hope to have both those reports at the next meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So now I know the bylaws are done differently now?
Just one meeting.
One reading?
You could get one motion.
To do all three readings?
No reason for me to get involved unless the numbering changes. Tonight, the numbering has not changed.
Okay. Councilor Pietrangelo, you're going to...
Motion to introduce the bylaw.
All right, indulge us.
First, second, and third reading.
Motion by Councilor Pietrangelo.
I think we should explain to the public that deep sigh. I have been here 19 years. He was before me. And I don't remember anybody else ever moving the bylaws for 19 years other than Councilor
It's a
Pietrangelo.
bit superstitious
We
for
know,
me now.
yeah, we know not to do it.
That's because he's always looking that way.
20 years, you were always looking that way too.
So we got a motion by Councilor Pietrangelo to give the bylaws a first, second, and third reading, seconded by Councilor Strange. All those in favor? That's approved. You've never lost that vote, Councilor, ever. So is there any, that's it for bylaws?
That's it?
So new business? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay. New business. Councilor Campbell, then Carrier.
Thank you, Your Worship. This will be quick. I've had several complaints of people who have taken a ride down the Chippewa Parkway, and there is those two spots at the Thundering Waters property that are still allowing access to the property. And I can't help but think, with the amount of snow that's on the ground, can't we throw some snow on there and block those entrances? Because there are snowmobiles going through there, there are all-terrain vehicles going through there, and running the risk of damaging the properties that we are trying to protect.
Can we get, I don't know if we got staff, Mr. Erlovich?
The short answer is no. You need a permit from the Conservation Authority to put anything on there, and they are working with the developer on what they're going to do.
There's no way we can speed up that process, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Carrier, then Lococo.
Thank you, Worship. I had a discussion with Mr. Todd about bringing something back to council to talk about the provincial mandate, maybe to amalgamate in the region, and how it may affect our budgeting process. I'm sure that if that's the way we're going to go, we may want to look at our budgeting, or what we budget, just a little different than if we were going to be here for long term. So I think we should just have some alternatives and some ideas. We might not want to buy certain things, we might want to invest in other things. I'd just like to have a discussion on it pertaining to budgeting, on what might happen if there's one city, if there's three cities. We had this discussion maybe, and Mr. Todd had some good ideas on what we might talk about prior to getting into our budget discussions, and maybe giving our directors some direction before they go through the budget discussion, depending on what might happen. I know it sounds a little confusing, but we don't really know what's going to happen, but we want to maybe adjust our budget accordingly.
Yep. Mr. Seo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our two large budgets being the operating and the capital budget, our hope would be that we would be in a position to provide council with a preliminary overview of the operating budget at the next meeting. At that time, we could have a conversation about how we're going to proceed with some of these items. We don't anticipate bringing the capital budget until later in the month. And I think a lot of what you're talking about may refer more to the capital side than the operating side.
Right.
But that will give us time to get some direction from council and kind of react as to what projects, based on that we want to bring forward. There may be some that we decide to postpone pending the outcome of those discussions. My understanding is that the province is looking at having those discussions wrapped up by mid-year, but we would want our capital budget approved well in advance of that. So I think we can fit that discussion into the February 12th operating discussion before we present you with the capital budget.
The other, further to that, if there's any commitments that the council made, an example on buses. I think did we talk about buying or ordering new buses in the future? Has that already been decided about putting in some orders for new buses? It might be a good example where if we were going to amalgamate, obviously we wouldn't be in charge of transit. It looks like that might be something that might be a regional or something like that. So it might be something we might want to look at if there's any commitments made, even by the council, but they haven't been ordered or purchased or yet. We might want to have a look at some things like that rather than get them in the works if it's not too late.
Okay, so February 12th. Okay, thank you. On that point, yeah, Councillor Pietrangelo?
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. And just on that point, I've had a bit of thought myself, and I guess my thought patterns have gone more towards municipalities' debt ratios when they amalgamate. And I think it would be interesting for council to know how past amalgamations have taken place and whether or not, I guess, debt ratios were taken into consideration. And I guess part of my fear is that if the province does look at amalgamating Niagara Falls with other municipalities and they have a higher debt ratio than we do, then I think we obviously stand to lose. And if there's no consideration that's given to debt ratio, then perhaps our thinking should be changing. Perhaps we should be looking at trying to improve every single sidewalk that we can, every single road that we can, separate every single sewer that we can, replace all of our parks equipment, do everything that we can for the residents of our city, if that's what has happened in the past, is that municipalities' debts are simply amalgamated. If that's not the case, then we should know that as well, and perhaps our thinking won't go there. But right now, I mean, that's where my thinking is going, is that our debt ratio is quite low, and I don't want to be amalgamated with municipalities who have very high debt ratio, and that there be no consideration given to that. So if there's any chance of getting some information back on how other regions were amalgamated and what considerations were given, I think that would be helpful to us moving forward.
Yeah, there should be a lot of history there on that. On this point, Councillor? Yep, Councillor.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more along the line of Councillor Pietrangelo. We've been through 3 mayors now, and each mayor has said other municipalities we are envious to other municipalities because we have the casino money, and they would be dying to get their hands on it. So when I first read about that, all I could think of was, wait a minute. So we're looking at building a new fire station. We need to do it before we're splitting that and having Grimsby voting on that too. We need to be sinking our money into whatever roads and sidewalks we have to do. We need to be anything that our casino money can go for, we should be doing it before we have to split it 13 ways. Because I am sure the other municipalities that are not as cash rich as we are just rubbing their hands saying, we've just been waiting to get our hands on that casino money. And with the announcement the other day, what did we get?
$5 million.
$5 million. And you can just see the other municipalities saying, that's going to be split all these ways now. So for 4 years, we are in control of our dollars. After that, we don't even have a clue how it's going to work.
Okay. On that point, Councillor Carrier?
Coincidentally, Councillor Iannone brought up something that I thought maybe we wouldn't do, because fire might become a regional responsibility, and we might spend $15 or $20 million putting a fire station that could be redundant 6 weeks after we finish it, and they could be done regionally or someone could come in and say, well, no, that's not where we want one. We want one here, not there. So that would be one I'd want to have a hard look at, if, because I don't know what would happen with fire. Whether fire would become, you know, one service, or each municipality would have their own, or I just want to be real careful on that.
Councilor.
And my mindset on that is, if the report says that residents in that area, and you've now approved Thundering Waters also, are not best served with the complement we have now and no station there, we're still building out there. It's not gonna make an ounce of difference. It's gonna be our money anyway. I think we bring in more revenue than any other municipality. It's gonna be our money whether we have control over it or somebody else does. But safety can't come in between whether we're gonna have control in 5 years, because we're not gonna be here. So
I think what Councilor Kerr is saying maybe Thorold will service Niagara Falls West, because our boundaries, because they built that new station. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how there's going to be a lot of questions. It's going to be it's huge. It's going to be huge. Okay, I've got Councilor Lococo and then Peter Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. During the election, we heard a lot of issues, and one of the issues was how are we spending our taxpayers' money? There is a process called participatory budgeting, and it allows the residents to know how we're spending their money. They get to participate, they get to choose what they're going to spend. The good thing about it is it tells them how much things cost, and then they can also see that. So I'd like to put a motion forward that staff investigate a participatory budgeting for the 2020 budget process and bring back a report in the capital budgeting meeting, which occurs the end of February, beginning of March.
Okay.
I've never heard of it. That'd be interesting to see.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Lococo, seconded by Councilor Ioannoni, that staff come back with a report on participatory budgeting for our capital budget. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, that's approved. Thank you for that. Councilor Peter Angelo.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I guess it was reported in the paper recently, there was an article about expropriating properties downtown, those by the GO station. I know some comments were in favor, some comments were opposed. I guess, Your Worship, my hope is that before we receive a report that looks at any specific properties, maybe council can get an education report on exactly what the expropriation process entails. Perhaps we can look at the cost, and not specifically of properties, but the cost of actually going through the process, the time it takes, the pros, the cons, any examples, just education in general. I think this council, and especially the fact that we have 2 new councillors, would benefit from it. The only expropriation I can ever remember going through is ones that deal with buying a piece of a roadway so that we can widen the road, or buying a daylighting triangle, things of that nature. I don't ever remember going down the road where we're expropriating property, so I think an education report would be in order anyway. I'll make that motion.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Peter Angelo, second by Councilor Strange, that we get an education report on expropriation. All those in favor? That's approved, unanimous. Thank you for that. Anything else, Councilor Peter Angelo?
I'm good.
You sure about that? That's it. Do we have any other new business? Yeah, Councilor Ioannoni.
People are messaging while we sit here. They just want us to ensure that all the plows are out, the roads are gone, we've got all the complement out there. People are saying, where's your salt, where's your sand, we're driving, the roads are terrible. And I'm just saying, we've got everybody out there that can be out there. So I'm assuming that our full complement's out there and they'll be working all night.
Yeah, Mr. Cieo.
Mr. Mayor, just to assure the public that we have a process in place. We would have night crews on now. I would guess that based on the accumulation of snow, we'll have a full operation later this evening. So as council is aware, we have to be careful on the timing of this, because drivers can only drive for so many hours. We faced that dilemma in the last large storm. So it's all timing, and a lot of it is that we like to get out there if the storm is hitting in those early hours so that the roads are clean in the morning. If you start too early in the evening, you've already got more accumulation through the night, and you've sort of exhausted the hours that your drivers can be out on the road. So it's all a timing thing, and our goal is to make sure that all the roads are clear and passable for morning commute.
Okay, so it'll be all hands on deck. And if I could, excuse me, ask someone to make a motion. I was speaking earlier with Serge Felicetti, our Head of Economic Development, about Go Train. I was curious to know how we're doing. And he's reached out to our contacts at the region, and I guess they've said we're exceeding expectations and projections of Metrolinx. So the numbers, although when I first heard some of the numbers, I said, is that good? And he says, yeah, they're thrilled. The numbers are very good so far compared to what they expected. So if I could just entertain, if someone could make a motion, maybe we could just ask staff for a very brief report on updates and how we can promote the service so we can get expanded times. Moved by Councillor Pietrangelo, second by Councillor Strange. All those in favor? Okay, and that's approved, thank you. If there's, new business?
Just one last thing. You know, I stood up in new business last time and was talking about what you went through, but you weren't here. So, you know, yeah. So it's just nice to see you back. And we all miss you, and we know the courage and strength that you've shown in the last 8 months going through all the chemo and, you know, physically, not only physically, but mentally. And we know you've tried to come to every meeting. We know it was very tough. You came to a couple of meetings. You were forced to miss chemo because you came to one meeting. So I don't think people realize, and we're going to, our little horseshoe here and senior staff, we're all really concerned about you. And I know all your family and friends and the support they showed you, and you had to win an election through that time. So we're just glad you're finished all, you're back, and we're glad to see you back.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I appreciate that. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you because you guys did a great job keeping things together, our staff and council. Nothing was missed. No ribbon was missed. No baby was without being kissed. And it's all because you guys did such a great job. So on behalf of myself, my family, I want to say thank you to all of you for your support. It's been fantastic. So thank you. All right, motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Dabrowski, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? That's approved. Thank you.